How's everybody doing? I am going to jump and just sort of show my screen real quick. I'm running two different screens, so it has a tendency to like hide my Zoom view. So I'm going to kind of jump in there and then kind of track my time, and I'll start probably a little bit after 12:30 in case there's some more people joining us. If you want, you can throw a question into the chat if you'd rather just sort of say something. Like I said, I won't be able to see it when I'm presenting. So if you just want to kind of jump in audio and interrupt me and ask a question, you're welcome to do that. So let's see if I can make sure I do not break this. Let's see here. Jump into the presentation. All right, can everybody see that? Am I good? Hopefully.
Yep, that looks good.
Okay. All right, we're around 12:30, and I'll start this. So this is about taking a pre-health course online, and it kind of involves a lot of sort of like lessons learned along the way to get to this point. But a little bit of background about me. My name is Tobias Nouns. Up until a week ago, literally, I was the assistant director for academic initiatives in an area of Creighton called the Edge, Creighton Edge, and that the Edge comprises pre-health and pre-law advising, academic success, disability accommodations, and the Career Center. I have shifted over to the Career Center since then. I've been at Creighton for about 15 years. I worked for 7 years with the pre-health team, and I still work with them a little bit in this transition and also with academic success. And I started at Creighton as an instructional designer. And I was with the group that went through the selection process that brought Canvas to Creighton, and have sort of seen it sort of evolve over time. And it's been sort of an interesting evolution along the way. As far as Creighton and pre-health goes, generally speaking, about half of our incoming freshmen indicate a pre-health interest. So basically, some years is a lot more, some is a little bit less, but of the about 1,000, 1,100 freshmen that come in, about half of them are pre-health. We have a number of pre-health faculty advisors that we interface with as a pre-health team in the Edge, and they are in different colleges across the university. We have professional staff that are pre-health advisors that I work with. I am not a pre-health advisor, but I work with that team and help set it up. And then our director of pre-health advising is Dr. Osterberry, and he and my boss, Tricia Sherrar, started this whole sort of formal instruction of pre-health information. And it started originally for pre-medical students. It's called PMed. It was started by Dr. Osterberry. And what he noticed is when he was having one-on-one sessions with students, he would continue to sort of answer the same questions, and thought that it may be beneficial to bring these students together in a cohort and be able to sort of answer common questions and let them sort of walk together through this sort of discernment and understanding of what it takes to be in medical school, the application process, et cetera. And so they started in the one open sort of block of time on many of their calendars on Fridays at 3:30 to 5. What happened is with the formation of the Edge, more emphasis and resources were applied to include other pre-health areas in this sort of formal instructional process. So 25 new courses across sort of 6 pre-health areas were built, and it was sort of viewed as, for a large part, a 3-year track. So you come in as a freshman, PMed 101, then that first semester, second semester, you go PMed 102, et cetera, all the way up to sort of your junior year. The one deviation of that is the pharmacy, because they're a 2-year entry point. They would start with freshmen, and then they would only kind of do a 2-year. And so it was sort of divided: fall, the 101, the 201, the 301, and then spring would be another course. They still met in person. And so a lot of that was in sort of the lecture halls or other rooms that we could do, again, at that same block of time. All of these courses, these learning communities, were 0 credit, but they were all courses that appeared on the student's official transcript. And for the many of them still do, some of them have shifted a bit. So it's something that incentivizes the student to kind of, succeed. The grade, if anybody's interested, since it's 3 credit, doesn't impact GPA, and the grade either satisfactory or unsatisfactory, we have started allowing the incompletes to allow students a little extra time to complete the requirements. In that sort of expansion and growth, we ran into some issues. One, students would forget to register for the class. They're so focused on getting into their next chem or bio course or taking care of their general ed requirements, that they wouldn't register for, PMed 102 or what have you. And that was an issue. Ran into scheduling overlapping rooms because of the growth, really kind of had to shift things around. And then what we discovered is in this growth, we had a lot of people, because we touched such a large percentage of the student population. A lot of people came to us and said, hey, can you present on this, or can you add this? And it really kind of, in IT terms, it's called feature creep, trying to add things, and that kind of happened. And then practically, honestly, it is a challenge to get students to engage on Fridays at 3:30 when they really would rather be doing something else. So we decided to make some changes. One of the biggest drivers, I think, was Dr. Osterberry's, he noticed that students were having an identity crisis. So if you came in as a freshman and you're pre-health or you're pre-med or something like that, and then, you're a freshman, you're pre-med, and then second semester pre-med, and then something happens in that sophomore, junior year, you can have an identity crisis, and he was concerned about that. The other thing we noticed is many students who are pre-health come in locked in their interest, and they don't explore other options. You may be interested in pre-med, but what about physician assistant? What about pharmacy? And then the practical reality of we have a limited amount of space for the number of students that need to be meeting in different sort of interest areas. And then we would have students miss registration and realize, like halfway through a semester, that, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be in this community, can I join? And then we'd have to sort of do some management on that end. So what we did is we sort of broke it down into 3 sort of distinct stages. And the first stage is that freshman year. And what we noticed is while we'd have a huge number of students enrolling into our first sort of 101 and 102, by sophomore year, many of those would sort of find a different interest. And so sort of cajoling them to sort of stay interested in stuff or whatever, it could become a distraction. So we shifted all of our learning communities to a year-long experience. So they're not registering for 101 and 102. You're going into a 1-year-long sort of experience. You're just sort of registering once. The freshman experience shifted into an information community. And we use that term because there's no requirement. It doesn't go on the transcript. And in Canvas, if you have a Canvas course that is not tied to your SIS, and I don't know if anybody who's more sort of technically inclined than I am might have a different take on this, then that means that it's sort of, we call those community groups at Creighton, so that you can manually enroll students. So they aren't coming from Banner. So in some respects, we capture them if they have an interest in their application, we enroll them, and then we ask them, hey, are you still interested in this? And we can take them out. We also set it up as, again, if it's not tied to your student information system, you can set it up as an open enrollment in Canvas, so a student can click a link and enroll themselves into that sort of experience. And so we really wanted to emphasize in that first year, they're adjusting to the sort of academic rigor of being in college, and sort of they have the information, we send out announcements, they're informed about student groups and stuff, but there's no requirement going on. The exception to that is for students who are sort of in a 2-year sort of application cycle. There's an early entry, pre-pharmacy primarily, but now occupational therapy now offers a 2-year entry point. Those students would be in sort of what we term sort of a learning community official, sort of registered learning community. The second year experience was more sort of a discernment. And what we did is we took all of our students who are pre-health interests, pre-med, pre-dent, OT, PT, pharm, vet, PA, and put them into a single learning community. We did this for a couple of reasons. One, so a student isn't sort of seeing that they're pre-med or pre-dent or what have you, and sort of diffuse it to sort of like you're pre-health, and these are some options that you can kind of explore. Because of the size, since we're taking all these sort of sophomore, second year students, PHLC I converted it to a hybrid model so that some of the experiences were on campus, many of them were online. We had, start of the semester is like 400 or plus students enrolled. And again, students can enroll regardless if they're on campus. So we had a lot of students that were study abroad that wanted to participate even though they would never be on campus. In the structure, really kind of tried to limit the number of like sort of extraneous materials and created a weekly sort of module driven single topic so that students would know, okay, this week we're focused on volunteering. We're focused on getting, how to calculate your GPA, stuff like that, so that this is the thing that you're focused on and going through the materials, and then there would be sort of an assessment at the end. Eventually, as we sort of evolved it, the in-person sessions really turned out to be something like 1 or 2 in the fall and then just one single one in the spring. And then this year, because of COVID, it is now sort of shifted to completely online, and we've sort of augmented some of the materials to really kind of hit the mark that we're trying to hit with that. The third year experience still had focus on a specific interest. So there's still a 300 level, sort of third year level, that's pre-med or pre-dent or pre-PA. So those are still sort of divided. We've taken those students who've gone through that sophomore discernment experience, and now we're putting them and targeting them into the area they're really focused on. And that third year experience really becomes preparing to apply for that professional program. And many of those in that third year are still face-to-face because students still have questions. This year, again, they've shifted to online, but we found that for those students that they're really stressed about that application process, we're kind of that face-to-face experience. There's still online components and materials that they can walk through, but it's sort of maintain that. Students have to successfully complete the 200 level, the PHLC 200, before they can register for the junior level communities. So that sort of second year experience really becomes sort of like you kind of have to do that and demonstrate that there is a material interest before you take into the next level, and you're kind of putting your portfolio together and sort of building your profile for application. Any student can register for a PHLC 200. You do not need to participate in the information community. That's completely optional. You could, your freshman year, do nothing and then come into PHLC 200 and you'd be fine. But you do have to successfully complete the second year of the PHLC 200 to get into the 300 level. As I said before, pre-pharmacy and now pre-OT is different. But we sort of maintain those where that's sort of a 2-year experience. Focusing on PHLC 200, and this is really kind of where the sort of presentation came out. When we decided to do this and bring all of the pre-health interests together into a single course, and I really wanted to make it sort of online so that we wouldn't, forcing 400 plus students into a lecture hall. It was a brand new course. So we sort of started from the ground up in design. We had content that we could bring in, and that was great. But I really wanted to find a balance between having requirements that students had to walk through and be informed about, but recognizing that for many students, they're focused on that sort of their academic courses that they really need to, they need to succeed on before they can be a viable candidate in application. So that was number one. Second was that by virtue of the fact that PMed was the oldest program, we had really a lot of sort of detailed information that we could sort of pull at the ready. And many of the other interests were sort of still sort of lecture driven. And The other thing is medical schools, if you apply to medical school, it's very consistent across all medical schools, what they're looking for as far as co-curriculars. If you apply to UNMC versus Creighton, Creighton might be more focused on service. They want to see more service, but generally speaking, those requirements are consistent across most of the medical schools. Whereas if you go to a PA school, physician assistant, they may be requiring something far more heavily in one area than another. And then also their requirements, their course requirements. So it took a lot of work to build up those other areas so that there was equitable information across all areas, because students kind of walk through all of them. They don't sort of walk into the pre-med and stay locked in. We wanted them to see everything. And I was very mindful. I didn't want to bias towards pre-medical information. Again, did it module topic per week. So we would do integrity, volunteering, shadowing or observational hours. And then you'd get into the evaluating different programs, sort of targeting different programs that you're interested in applying for, and getting information like, are you a viable candidate for these programs that you're interested in? Again, sort of dividing into practical knowledge, procedural knowledge, and then sort of exploration and strategic information. Because of my instructional design background, I pre-built as much as I could for all of the fall and as much as I could for the spring. And then when we launched the course, the year-long course, during the winter break, I finished building out that sort of spring semester. And that's sort of the model we've been using ever since. The other thing is I like to pre-write my announcements. And I don't, in Canvas, you can pre-write your announcements and lock it and release on different times. I pre-wrote them in sort of a Word document, and then I would sort of copy and paste it in and sort of control when the announcement went out. I tried to make it consistent. So my announcements, I announce on Tuesday mornings at 9, because I read somewhere that more people read their email on Tuesday mornings than they do on Monday mornings because they're overwhelmed. And then the final announcement on Friday to remind them that their assessment for that week is due at 5. We also have a newsletter that goes out, and that is consistently sort of sent out as an announcement, but as a document attached to it at noon on Fridays. But just trying to be sort of consistent all the time. I have very limited recorded video content. If we have a guest speaker or somebody coming in, they'll record the material, but I found it difficult that if I wanted to record a lecture or something and then something changed, I'd have to re-record that all the time. Whereas if you created a page of content, you could go into that page and change and edit. And given the wide breadth of areas we're covering, something changes in PA, we learned something about how medical schools are now focused on teamwork or something like that. We wanted that flexibility in recording. It's like you're doing a lot of processing, a lot of post-production, and it helps us kind of keep it evergreen. We can adjust and adapt, I think, a little bit easier that way. So a lot of the material we have is text-driven. Not that we don't have video, but a lot is text. We don't have any discussion boards or online peer interaction. Given the number of students we have, that is a lot to manage. I'll come back to that later. I use a lot of graded surveys. So some of the assessments are really like, hey, is this right or wrong that you do this in an application, or you're looking for how many volunteering hours. But some of it, again, when I'm asking the students to go out and go and research programs, there is no right answer about what program they want to do. So I use a lot of graded surveys. It helps me know who's finished the survey, and then it sort of automatically gives them a sort of your complete in the grade book. Initially, again, we retained face-to-face sessions, and what I would do is I would take attendance on the face-to-face sessions. I'd go into an assignment that was associated with that, publish it, enter all of the students who attended manually, and then I'd use the messaging tool in the grade book for that assignment and say, message students who don't have a grade and let them know, hey, now you have to complete the online component since you didn't attend. And that's kind of nice. I screwed that up one time, and I said, whoever hasn't submitted is another option. And if you manually enter a grade, but students never submitted an assignment, then it goes to everybody regardless. And so that was a message I had to send out and apologize. Learned that lesson the hard way. In one of Zach's presentations earlier, he mentioned that you can lock modules. And so you can do it by, if you complete certain tasks, you can unlock the next module. I locked the modules by date and time. So all of my modules were released on a Tuesday at 9. And so the next week, and it would sort of unlock as they moved along. And I kind of kept it as a sort of traditional release week kind of thing, like a course. That has since changed after a conversation with the pre-professional advisors. They're like, we have students who come in and they want to talk about shadowing, but we don't release shadowing information till week 8, and we're in week 2. And so what we've done now is release all of the content in the fall semester. And then when the spring semester comes, then we release all the content in the spring semester, which is sort of, it gave me some palpitations, but it works out pretty well. Additionally, and this sort of was brought up in the keynote, I locked down the navigation as much as possible to funnel students into a single sort of view. So all of their content is that module view. That's how we sort of design it. So what do we know after we made the changes? Again, keeping the fact that this isn't a real course. These students are not required to take this class. It's enrichment only. So really cut away the extraneous and focus on what they really need to know. Try to focus on, if they're going to spend time, where the value is for the student. The second thing is we continually update. So we'll go back at the end of the year and say, hey, this worked, this didn't. We now know this. We're going to change this design. We're going to improve this. And so every year we sort of iterate the design of the program. One thing that I think needs improvement, and I don't know, again, how to address it necessarily, is the glaring weakness in this sort of peer interaction. I know we can create groups in Canvas. I know we can set that up. I just, given the number of students, it was just too much to handle. Also, the activities are not terribly interactive, and that sort of frustrates me. And then again, it kind of goes to the complexity of the module activities. And I'll come to sort of, when working with Canvas, one of my, I'm not gonna say frustrations, but I'd like to see, and that those are sort of limited, and you really sort of, once you get comfortable, you can get creative and try and do different things, but I really think you kind of need to be comfortable with how, you know, different assessments are built and stuff like that. So what are some of the practical takeaways that I've sort of learned? Do a single path to the content. I really think that if you're going to use modules, hide your files and assignments and pages tab. So students, you understand where the students are going. You can see where that flow of information is and workflow is if they have an issue. Be consistent in your organization. If you're going to do weekly modules, do weekly modules. If you're going to do content modules, do content modules, or skill-based modules, or don't do modules and do something else. But as long as it's consistent, the student can be comfortable and know what they're coming to. I'm going to throw this in here because, you know, if you do have access to an instructional designer or instructional design team, you know, tap their shoulder, and it isn't just tech support. It's about ideas and concepts and ways that maybe you hadn't thought about approaching a concept. I think the analytics that are built into Canvas are okay. What I found is they don't scale to the size, and I have a difficult time sort of digging deeper into some things. If you want to do complex designs, like you want to unlock modules because they've completed previous modules, you know, be careful of that. It can get complicated. It took me a while to be comfortable with unlocking things by date, but that's an advantage, you know, just sort of an automated process, but just sort of be careful. And then if you do want to try something, sort of pick your spots, learn and try something smaller, and then iterate and sort of develop and see how the students respond to that sort of initial design. I really believe in iteration in building. Thoughts on Canvas? God, I really, really wish they had branching in quizzes. It is just frustrating to me that I'd have to use an external tool to allow for branching, and that would really make things, I think, for me, in designing a concept of making a sort of more robust sort of activity that isn't based on correct or incorrect or surveys that you just sort of follow the path. I would really like to see that. Frequent updates that Canvas does, they're not updating as frequently, but it cuts both ways. When I was in IT and I was doing a lot of instructional design, I was on top of it. I knew what was going on. I kind of prepared. And since I stepped away, and so I'm still in Canvas, I'm still doing those things. It's not a focus of mine. And so something will change. And while I get the notification, Barb is great in sending notifications, if I'm not paying attention, it kind of pops up and I'm like, oh no, and I have to adjust. I'd like to be able to hide modules based on sections. you can do it with assignments. You can say this section gets this assignment, but you can't say this module is viewable by only this section or whatever. I'd like to see that. And the thing that I used a lot, we don't have it anymore, was a thing called design tools. Originally, it was an open source tool that somebody made, I believe, at Utah State that we kind of picked up, and I thought it was great. I loved it. It helped me design pages and layouts and stuff. And it now has been sort of acquired by this group called City Labs. It's called Design Plus. I'm sure it's still great, but it costs money. But I really use that a lot, and it helped me with my sort of design and development, especially on the pages. So with that, I'm gonna take any questions if you have any. And then this is the last slide that I will throw up there.
And I also just dropped the link for the section evaluation form into chat as well.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any questions? I see Barb is here. Again, Creighton, we've been using Canvas since 2012, I believe, and it has changed a lot. And it can be in sort of initially when you step into it, can be an adjustment. We had used Blackboard, and then we switched to an LMS called Angel, which then Blackboard acquired, and then we moved over to Canvas kind of early on, and it was a growth. It was good, and we had a huge adoption once we made the shift. But it's been good. There are a lot of different ways that you can tackle a course design. It's flexible. So if you're doing sort of elementary or primary design versus secondary versus higher ed, it's just being comfortable, being comfortable yourself, and then sort of presenting that to your students. If you do have support as far as instructional design, I definitely take advantage of that. And again, like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be tech support, but sort of that kind of concept and ideas. And again, with instructors and teachers, ideas can bubble up, and some of those ideas are so creative that what I built was intentionally limited. But if you want to kind of go and do some neat stuff, it's possible. It really is. Stop my share here.
Well, Tobias, thank you very much. If there are any questions remaining, we have about 3 minutes left. But it seems like questions are a little bit quiet. I think there was lots of great information and people are processing, and that's perfectly fine too. Our next session will start at 1:15. We've got about a 15-minute break here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, not seeing any new questions coming in right now. So I'll stop the recording and we'll start it back up for that next session.